Ooh, laundry. You can tell. You know the story if you've watched videos by now. So, watching my buddy Nick, and he's great. I love Nick so much, man. He's an inspiration without knowing that he's an inspiration. And yeah, I'm not even wearing the headphones today. I'm pretty sure the gain is going to be fine. I'll watch back and double check, but I'm pretty confident with the sound right now. So, anyways, Nick was being thankful for his recent celebration, and I'm thankful for Nick. I'm thankful that in my journey, the world has spun in such a way that it brought a young man like that into my life. What Nick put me in mind of today as I was watching his video was that first meeting, that first moment where everything kind of came together for me. Let me back up a little bit by explaining that obviously our stories are very unique, very different in many ways, but very similar in some ways as well. For me, and I've revisited this too many times to count now, I feel like a broken record. Third generation, my grandfather died practicing. As I understand it, my father found sobriety when he was in his mid to late 40s. I believe I was 7 years old when he came into the program Alcoholics Anonymous and found sobriety. And he jumped in, full-on cannonball into the pool and never looked back. There was a lot of drunks that needed a lot of help in the city of Windsor at that time, and my dad hit the ground running. In spiritual terms, in Alcoholics Anonymous, we learned that we keep this thing by giving it away. My dad gave it away. When the phone rang, he ran to pick up a drunk, get him in a detox. That's just what my dad did. He was on the ground running, and there was a couple of very influential people at that time. Later on, became very influential people who were very grateful for my dad's efforts. Brentwood Recovery Home in the city of Windsor was in its infancy back then, and my father was very instrumental in those earliest days of getting drunks into detox, into Brentwood. So when the opportunity came along for me to jump into Brentwood, I was kind of grandfathered in, if you will. And that certainly benefited me, but also that kind of, in some ways, my father's name allowed me to kind of continue practicing in some strange way. Just the knowledge that this isn't going to happen to me because my dad kind of shielded me from that, kind of allowed me to keep going, if that makes any sense at all. So, when I met Sarah, I had just come out of 6 months in Brentwood Recovery Home and was white-knuckling any sort of sobriety that I had. And it didn't take very long for me to kind of break with that recovery and jump headfirst back into my own addictions. Mostly marijuana, cannabis, buying it, selling it, loosely growing it, some harder drugs, cocaine. I made use of psychedelics in the form of acid. I made a lot of use of that, and drinking, copious amounts of drinking, and that's why for me the idea of alcoholism took root, because alcohol led me to all of those things, and all of those things led me back to alcohol. And I know I've made this circle before, but that is my recovery, and that is me as a practicing alcoholic. Doing everything I need to do keeps me sober, and then giving that away to help other people get them sober. Just it's in my brain makes sense. When things finally came to a head with Sarah, and my alcoholism kind of left me with nothing more than the reality of who I had become, there was a very specific moment that I kind of want to share with you. Suffice to say that I had, in the weeks and months leading up to this moment, I had tried a couple of times to get back to meetings. I had met with a couple of drunks who were happy to drive me. I didn't have a car. All of that money was going to booze and drugs, man. At least in that last year, mostly booze, because I had given up drugs probably about a year before I gave up drinking. Had a really bad experience. Had a really bad high, a real bad freak out episode, and gave it up hard. So to correct myself, in those last weeks and months, all of that money was going to booze and partying. I had friends that I had met in recovery that were happy to pick me up and get me to meetings, and it got to the point where when I reached out, it was like, hey dude, get yourself to a freaking meeting. Like, I'm not going to continue to drag your ass along. If you want this, go get it yourself. And I needed to hear that. I really did. The last conversation I had, this one friend in particular who had told me to get my ass to a meeting had called to reach out and asked me if I wanted to go to one. He's like, hey man, how are you doing? I wanted to reach out to you, hear how you were doing. I hope you're doing well. I'm going to a meeting tonight. Wanted to pick you up and take you along. Thought we could hang out and bro out. And I was like, nah dude, I'm okay, I'm doing fine. I'm not going to meetings tonight. I appreciate you reaching out. Convinced again that I was on the right track. Gosh, I hope this is making sense. It really feels like it's all over the place. But anyways, we had a couple of football parties, and Christmas was upon us, and I had said to Sarah, I'm going to end up at your dad's house, and he's going to offer me a beer. I just know it. And all he drinks is Blue Light, so it's not real beer anyways. And this is a story we've told 1,000 times. And she was like, you're going to do what you're going to do, man. I really don't care. And any sobriety I had at that point, which might have been a couple of weeks maybe, it was gone. It was gone in that moment. Because I had already, set myself up and, padded my justification. Well, she said it's okay, so, Drunks who know the process are going to understand this. So, I end up at her dad's house, and Christmas is upon us, and sure enough, I'm drinking, and I get home that night, and I say to her, I only had 2 beers. See how good I did? They're only Blue Lights, not even real beer. Boom, I was back. And in 2 weeks' time, I've told this story before, I was worse than I had ever been. And it's not a brag to tell you that the skinny little 180-pound, 6-foot tall guy that I was, 6'4", about 180, 190 pounds at that time, I had a capacity to consume alcohol that was scary. What I could put in my system and continue to function with was scary. What it took to get the engine primed so I could continue to party was scary. And I didn't clue into that for months to come. I also had the capacity to be a full-on blackout drunk, and I had no clue about that for probably another year to come before that knowledge set in. The last drink I took, because of one of these parties, there was beer left in my fridge, and I was oh man, it's funny to think about how convinced I had myself that I was some elitist. I don't drink that garbage beer. You know us, man. I had Moosehead in the fridge, and for me, Moosehead wasn't even beer. It was, worthy of the sewer. But here I was, walking in the house from work, knowing that those 2 moose head were left in my fridge, and they tasted pretty good, at least in my mind's eye they did. So I go to the fridge and I grab myself one of these moose head and I sit down and I go to drink it, and I get 2 pulls off that bottle when my young son, learning how to walk, taking his first steps at that time, knocks it over. And in an instant, in the blink of an eye, I was set to go full on rage at this young guy. Taking his first steps, learning how to walk, and I was set to go full on rage at him, and I felt it instantly. I was ready to rage. Full on, explosive, throwing things, trash in the house, rage. But I stopped myself. I've never forgiven myself to this day for that. I don't know that I ever really truly will understand forgiveness as I know it today. I've enjoyed quite a bit of forgiveness, and I've given quite a bit of forgiveness, so it's something I'm familiar with. But this moment, I've never arrived at a place where I've been able to forgive myself for allowing myself to get there, for being in that moment. I celebrate daily the fact that I stopped myself as quickly as I did. It never got to that point. I felt it well up. It was ready to come out, and I caught it. I caught it head on, like a 90-mile-an-hour fastball. I caught it. And that rage never came out. It never entered the room. I picked my son up. I picked up the bottle, dumped what was left into the sink, went to the fridge with him still in my arms, sat him on the counter, cracked the next one, dumped that down the sink. Brought him back with me as we cleaned up the mess together. That was it. I've never touched, alcohol has never touched my lips since. And I found recovery shortly after that. I found the meetings. There was a moment with our local parish priest and the caretaker for the church, who was a dear friend of my father's, who knew my father very well from recovery. Kind of an intervention, if you will. They came into the house and guided me toward the next step, which was taking that new me into the meetings, where I found recovery, I found friends, I found sobriety. To tell you my first meeting, I couldn't. I remember walking into the Central Group of Alcoholics Anonymous in Windsor, Ontario, West Windsor, Ontario. I remember walking up to the podium after the meeting because I saw a face from Brentwood that I recognized very well. And in my best power pose moment, I leaned on the podium, and he's like, "Hey, brother, good to see you, man." I said, "It's great to be here. I guess I need a sponsor." And he said, "Okay, how can I help you out with that?" I said, "Do you want to be my sponsor?" And he said, "Yeah." That was that. And my very first meeting, I knew exactly what I had to do because it had been a part of who I was my whole life. And I just started. And I never looked back. Super grateful again that Nick put out his video and put this in my mind so I could share that with you. I know I've shared it before. I don't know if I've ever shared it as thoroughly, but it's something I wanted to put into the ether today. Again, I'm going to have to watch this back and make sure the gain's good and the sound is okay. What I take from that to this day is the dishonesty with myself. Rarely are our stories believed by anybody. By the time we get to this place, we are white noise to the people in our lives. Let me assure you of that. If you're listening to this, whoever you are, wherever you are, if you're struggling, if this is something you're watching because you feel like it's going to help you in some way you're struggling with addiction, with alcoholism, whatever it is. By the time you get to that point, the point that I described in my story, you are white noise to the people in your life. I'm telling you. Facts. Anything you say is just empty words. What we're really struggling with is the lie that we're telling ourselves. And to that end, there's a way out. And it's in the doors of those meetings. It's in those dusty church basements, community centers. It's in the doctor's office. What you need is the desperate willingness to do what you're told to do. I go back to Brentwood when I talk about that because I was given a card. Ask, listen, do what you're told. 3 simple things. That worked for me. And it works for most of us. Simple idea. Ask questions, listen, which means you shut this off and hear the words coming at you, and then do what you're told. That's it. That's the way out. It really is. It works if we work it, friends. I love you, and I am cheering you on, and I want you to know that if it can happen for me, it can happen for anybody. I love you guys. Take care.